had a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. You were lucky it had branches and needles on it. It was the most...
I looked at my daughter, she had a Charlie Brown tree too.
We made a joke that my father waited for them to throw the trees away and then he'd pick up our tree.
My father's family was in business. They were in a macaroni business. They used to make macaroni and sell it. My mother's family I don't know too much about. She was one of, I think, 5 or 6 daughters. There were no boys in her family. And my father only had one sister. And he wound up in a concentration camp. He kept running away, and he constantly was being picked up and put back in to find the war ended. He found his way back to Italy, and he met my mother, whom he knew before, and he married her.
Her father did not want her to marry him. And I guess just the way things turned out, she too was a little defiant. She married him. That was it.
And he left her with his mother. Meanwhile, she was in a family way, and my sister was born in Italy, the firstborn of the family. But my father kept telling my mother that he would send for her and bring her and my sister Angie to the United States. Finally, he did. In those days, they sailed for 13 days on the water, which was a horrible experience. And she was sick most of the time. And she had the child, Angie at that time, I think was 6 or 7 years old. So a man had befriended her and befriended Angie. And another woman, I don't know if his wife or who it was, but they were taking care of Angie while my mother was constantly sick. But she hated it, and she would never go back to Italy because of that. She said if she went, she'd have to fly back. And my father wouldn't go back unless he could go by boat. So they never went.
Angie was 6 years old before she came to America. So she was 6 years of age, did not speak a word of English, and went to school only speaking Italian. She had it very hard. But she managed to overcome everything.
Well, I went to school speaking only Italian too. Yeah, I was 4 years old.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember you ever speaking Italian.
Me neither.
Never.
Mary,
Never.
how could you remember when you're younger than me by almost 3 years?
You never spoke
I
it
never
even
heard
as
you speak
got older.
Italian.
Never.
Do you guys
let me
remember?
finish telling you, I was 4 years old when I spoke that language.
That's
Getting
your
off
memory.
this.
That's your memory.
Do you remember?
Yeah, because Mrs. McKenna was my...
But to me, that's not my memory because I don't recall you ever speaking
I
Italian.
don't remember you ever
it
speaking
doesn't
Italian.
matter what you recall.
To
what
this
you recall
day,
and what
I
happened
don't
was a trip.
remember you knowing any Italian.
He told my mother that he had a home for her with all the furniture and everything all set up.
He had set up an apartment, but everything he purchased was bought on time payments, even in those days. And he didn't realize that you just make an initial payment is not the ownership of that furniture and stuff.
First of the following month, when she was here in America, somebody came knocking at the door, and she opened the door, and people were telling her, "You owe us so much money." Poor thing didn't understand what they were saying. And they kept insisting that either they take the furniture from her or she pay the debt. When they started lifting up the furniture, they finally got her to understand that she owed money on this furniture. And all that was on each piece was $1. So now Mama had to figure out what she was going to do. So she finally found a friend who spoke Italian. She became friendly with her. And she told her that there's homework she could do in the house to make money. And Mama started working in the house.
In those days, because the landlord did not want children in houses, we tended to move constantly. That my father, when he had to look for an apartment, would only take maybe 2 or 3 of us, as though we were the only children. Till the landlord would find out we were 10 children, and then we would be evicted.
We lived from apartment to apartment because nobody wanted a family of so many children. So we were lucky if we got by after a year or two in one apartment. We'd have to move again. Finally, 1945 or 44, I'm not sure, they bought the first brownstone on 7th Avenue, 49 7th Avenue. And Papa renovated the brownstone. It was all furnished rooms. With on each floor there was a bathroom, and in the center of the 2 big rooms there would be a series of lavatories, linen closets, and then there'd be a front room would be very large, and the back room was very large, because that's the way those houses were built.
My father finally decided to buy a house. He bought a house in Park Slope, 49 7th Avenue in Brooklyn, for $5,000. And he renovated the entire house, and my older brother, Pat, and also all the girls, we all had to take a share in helping him fix that house to a good condition.
Papa, as he fixed each floor, he would tell us to go up there and clean the apartment. Make sure you wash all the windows. I was about maybe 14 by this time. So Papa said, wash the windows, and we're 5 stories up. So like a dummy, I climbed out on the ledge of the window, and I'm standing on the ledge, 5 stories up. My mother, who didn't use her head and happened to come home from shopping, saw me standing up there, and she yelled. Now I could have fallen off that ledge. Till today, I don't know how I had the courage to do what I did. But I somehow managed to get off that ledge and get inside.
We lived there a number of years. Then he bought another house on Berkeley Place, 109 Berkeley Place in Brooklyn. And we lived there for a number of years. And then we moved back to 7th Avenue. My father was a laborer. He did so many different things. He worked at the airports. He worked for cement. He would do cement. He worked in playgrounds. He laid a lot of playgrounds. He worked at LaGuardia Airport, putting the lines in, wire lines and everything. And then he became a presser. He would press clothes in the factory.
Papa did what he could, but like I said, most of his work was seasonal. And that was really what happened. Over the years, Mama did all her housework and worked all the time in the house. She taught us all how to sew. She bought a couple of machines, power machines, these big old power machines, and she taught us how to work them. She took a lot of contractors' work, like making linings for winter coats. It was really a hard way to live, but that's the way we survived. And she was very proud that she was able to pay the bills.
My father ruled the house with an iron fist. What he said was rule. There was no ifs, ands, or buts.
We weren't allowed to talk. No talking at the table. My father used to say, when you talk at the table, you're dealing with debt because you can choke on your food. I said, that's a nice way of putting it, Papa. But that's what he used to tell us. And we never spoke against Papa or Mama. Never answered back. We didn't dare, because we'd get the back of his hand. Which we knew that his word was the law.
My father had a habit that when he finished the day's work, he had a whistle. And when we heard that whistle, you had better make sure you came straight home, because he was home and you had to be home.
Each one of us had a job to do every night. And Mama, God bless her, she used to prepare the dinner. And one would have to set the table, one would get the silverware, one would get the dishes, napkins. We never used paper napkins, and we never used American bread. We only ate Italian bread and the cloth napkins. And we always had to have a tablecloth on the table. We didn't eat directly on the table. Papa had this gigantic old table, and he built benches all around the table that we would sit on. Except my father and mother had these armchairs that they were the head of the table at each end. Mama would make dinner, and she made the best she could. You know, she'd make for argument's sake, she'd make macaroni and beans, or she'd make lentil and beans, whatever. So,
Macaroni, 5 pounds of macaroni every day.
yeah. So Papa would tell my mother, feed the children, whatever is left, I'll eat, even if it's just sauce. I'll dip the bread in it and eat that. So he made sure we all ate first. We even used to bring in the neighbors' kids. One time, Mama was making mashed potatoes. And there was a bar of white soap on the counter. I guess you already know what happened. So she had made the mashed potatoes, the meat and everything, and she put this big bowl on the table. But everybody didn't want to eat those potatoes. So they kept saying, it tastes like soap. And Papa got mad at us and said, you eat those potatoes. And we kept telling Papa we don't want to eat them. We think there's soap in there. Mama didn't realize that she had mashed the soap into the potatoes without realizing it. You know, Papa was yelling at us all and told us he would punish us if we didn't eat the potatoes. So we ate the potatoes and got diarrhea.
The chicken soup, we used to have the heads, the feet, and the wings. That's how we got chicken soup.
Most of our clothes she made.
A lot of things, like say, I had an adult sister, and parts of it so worn out. Other parts were still very good. So she'd take the part that was good and make a smaller garment for one of the children. And that's how she saved money too. And yet we were dressed great.
We all got hand-me-downs. It was all
Well,
hand-me-down. That was
excuse
it.
me, Mary, but we were also on home relief.
Yes. We
There
got
was a lot of
what was
clothing given
called
to us from home relief.
home relief packages because we were so many children. In those days, it was depression.
I remember sitting by the window early in the morning on a summertime and looking out the window and seeing the milkman, the milk wagon coming by, horse and wagon, and delivering milk and butter and eggs to people in the neighborhood. Of course, we didn't get any because we couldn't afford it. Butter was a commodity that we never used in our house because being Italian, we used olive oil. And eggs, of course, eggs we used. Papa used to go where they had discounted eggs. If they were slightly cracked or something like that, he would buy them and bring them home. Sometimes he was lucky enough to get a whole dozen that wasn't cracked. And Papa managed to make sure we all had enough to eat.
And I remember not having panties to fit me, so I used the safety pin on the panty to keep it up. I never forgot that.
Were there any Christmas presents?
Oh, yes.
Well, I remember that Angie, the oldest one, as we got older, while we were still little, she would get one of the older dolls, she'd change the clothes, change a wig, and redo the dress, and pass it on to the next child.
I got that for 4 or 5 years in a row.
Thought we
And then I
had.
didn't look at a doll again.
We thought we had a collection of dolls. It was the same doll, different dress every year.
I'll tell you what they used to do with our Christmas stocking. A couple of nuts, a couple of pennies, and a piece of coal. We used to get all the Sears and Roebuck's catalogs, and we used to make our own little cutouts from it. The little figures that were there, and cut the little dresses out, put the little tabs, and that was our cutouts. That's how we lived.
It was a beautiful neighborhood. We lived in one of the most beautiful neighborhoods you could ask for. Everything was available to you there. You had the Botanic Gardens. You had, which I was constantly in the Botanic Gardens, especially in springtime. Of course, the cherry blossom trees. I used to love walking around those gardens. We were very poor people, but that area seemed to have a clientele that attracted a lot of well-to-do, intelligent people, well-educated people. And on Sunday, I would go to the museum and sometimes to the library, mostly to the museum, and sit in a corner somewhere and hide and listen to the orchestra. It would be like a 3 or 4 piece, not a band, just say a band, but they did a recital every Sunday. And I used to love to sit there and listen to it. And I'd stay most of the time until it was finished, and then I'd go home.
My father loved opera. And we'd go to the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Because we were so many, he couldn't take us all at one time, but he took us one at a time.
So we had the library, the museum, and the Botanic Garden. What more could you ask for?
Even came winter with the snow. We'd go into Prospect Park on the sleighs and we termed it as Suicide Hill. It was just a little hill, but we went down and we had a very good time.
You had Eastern Parkway, which is a wide intersection, and when there were holidays or parades, my father and mother made a big thing out of Memorial Day. We'd pack up a big lunch. We'd go and stand by and find a place where we could see the parade, and after the parade, we'd manage to get to the park.
The only thing I remember is going to was Coney Island at the Mardi Gras. and seeing the parade, the Mardi Gras. And the biggest thing was that we had one ride on the merry-go-round and we had an ice cream. And that was the big thing for us.
But
What about the ice cream cone?
That's what I said, the ice cream. And we paid a nickel to go to the movies.
We went to movies a lot. In those days, you got a ticket to go to a theater for maybe 5 cents. And at that time, you saw about 10 cartoons and 2 feature films. And it got to the point that the theater owners more or less knew us quite well. So any problem, they were watching over us and everything.
Movies? Oh, I loved The Wizard of Oz, Snow White. I loved all the classical cartoons, Fantasia, Peter Pan, Pinocchio, all of those. I love Gaslight. Of course, all the movies that Ingrid Bergman made, Notorious, Casablanca.
Baby Snooks. That used to be Fanny Bryce. Yeah. And the Green Lantern and the Shadow. What else? Oh, Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dallas. I don't know if you ever heard of them. The Green Hornet, the Lone Ranger. They were all on the radio at that time. And we spent, all of us, sitting around that in a sanctum. When she was thrown out, my father didn't know about it. We had to hide it from my father. So he used to work it out so that when Raymond came to get her, Leah would go to the second level, because we had power floor and basement. And she would go out to the second level, down the stairs, out the front door. Meanwhile, when Papa would ask for Leah, oh, she's downstairs in the basement, or she's upstairs doing something, and we never told him where she was. And she was out with Raymond.
We got along. We all got along very well. My brother Frankie was my big defender. If I had anybody picking on me, he would come and he'd take care of them.
We had one cat we used to call her Peppermint. We had a doll carriage. We used to put the cat in the doll carriage, and the cat used to lay on his back like this, and we'd put a blanket on, put a hat on her head, and we'd walk around the house with the doll carriage with the cat in it, and treat it like it was a baby.
My father always had what he called his feast day, and it was in August, and he'd make a big celebration for that feast day in the house. In the house, though.
Well,
But it was for his feast day.
that was a
That
feast
he
day.
kept from his Italian background.
And my mother did certain things as far as for baking for the holiday.
Everything was from the Italian background. What are you
Easter.
talking about?
She used to make a basket out of dough with a colored egg inside. And she used to make one for each one of us like that.
They're still making today over here in Mona Lisa.
and that's for what occasion?
That was
Easter.
an
Oh, for Easter.
basket.
Okay.
Easter. Now Christmas, it was cheese pies. Some had
No, cheese pies were
citrus
Easter.
fruits in it. Some didn't. Oh yes, it did.
I said cheese pies also were for Easter.
Yeah, but mostly for the Christmas.
Truffaut's and the chocolate
That's
thing.
what she used to make.
That
the chocolate
she made.
calzones.
Yeah,
And
they were like
street
raviolis with chocolate and nuts in it.
We used to go to church with Papa on Sunday, but not every Sunday. And Mama didn't go much to church. She was too tired between working and having to finish the work and getting it ready. I used to deliver the bundles of work to the factory and have it written down in the book what she did. So Mama was too tired really to get to church. Of course, she would insist we all get to church, and of course we all received the sacraments and all the things we needed to do. But we were not the overly religious family.
My father's favorite expression was, someday you're going to say, my father, he was right. His favorite expression.
As difficult as it seemed then, it was a good life. A lot better than we realized. We didn't know then how good it was until we got older. Till we were able to, because we were close. We stayed together. Even till now that we're old, we're still close, as much as we can be, which is important.
These are only a few of us. It stops at me when I was the baby. This is myself.
And point out
So-
who's, point out
This is Mary. That's Leah, Matilda, Edith, Susie, Angie, Patty, my mother and my father.
what did
But
they,
there were 5 more
And this
children after
picture
that.
had to have been taken about 1935. This is another old picture. This being my father, my sister Angie, my sister Susie, my mother. This is probably Patty
Patsy's next.
and Matilda. This was Edith. Edith was the baby in this picture.
the family had a car?
No, this was Coney Island. It was all prop. Nothing more. My father never drove. No one in the family drove until they got much older. This is my father when he was in service in the Italian army.
Oh, where are we?
Mary had a picture of Lorraine.
Now, when was he in the Italian army?
Oh, he had to be in his early
Bit
20s
of soda.
in World War One. I did.
Oh.
This is Angie and Don.
Give me that vanilla.
Sammy and Susie. Patty and Susie. Matilda and Don. Edith and George. Leah and Raymond. Kathy and Frankie. Lucy and Bill. Some of the
Now
people
it's like
that
you don't think-
received
now it's nothing.
confirmation in various ages. This
Okay.
is Matilda and Patty. That's Leah and my sister-in-law Susie. That's Mary and I really don't remember her name. She was a good mother. This was Edith and Ida. This was my sister Susie. I think my sister Angie, my mother is over here, and I must be over here.
Is this whose confirmation is this?
This is my sister Susie. This was a picnic that we had gone on in Prospect Park.
Well, tell me who's who.
This is Leah. I guess that's Edith, Matilda, Angie, and my mother. And this is Dolores. I think she might have been graduating. And this is Mary Ann, my sister Dolores, and my niece Mary Ann.
Okay.
And this was at 109 Berkeley Place. This was also my mother and father at Berkeley Place. Now this is in the backyard of the house on 7th Avenue, 49 7th Avenue in Brooklyn. This was Frankie, my mother, and my brother Patty while he was in service. This was my sister Angie when she was in high school in a play.
Oh, which one is she?
This one is Angie,
Okay.
the second one.
Okay.
And these are my parents as they got older. My father was shorter than my mother. For that reason, he's the one standing and she's sitting. From two people, I think we number well over 100 now. So between children, sisters and brothers, then great children, great nephews, and so forth, it amounted to quite a few people now.
because we were close. We stayed together. Even till now that we're old, we're still close, as much as we can be, which is important.